So what is a fake rule, and why do we want to break it? A fake rule is a rule that we all follow, but it may not be the best way to live your life, and it might not be the best way to work with others. So break it. Here at the Stupski Foundation, where we're spending down, we've found that the most effective way to do it is to break the fake rules of philanthropy. Welcome to another edition of Break Fake Rules. It's our little show where we talk about the various practices that we can engage in, what we call the rules, the fake rules, that prevent us from doing the best in social change. And today we are joined by Julián Castro. We're joined by an entire audience here of people in Atlanta, Georgia, at the National Center for Family Philanthropy Conference. And what a place to do a conversation like this. We're in Georgia. I understand, Julián, that Georgia may have some relevance in the next election.
Oh, I have no doubt. Yeah, I bet the folks here are sick and tired of political ads. They're turning off TV,
sure they are.
staying away from their devices, all of that.
And let's talk about that. Fair to say you're mayor at 8 or something like that?
It feels like that, yeah.
So you have been someone that has challenged political orthodoxy right out of the chute. So tell us a little bit about that. When you looked out at social change for you, why did you look at what most people would say is something you do later in life and say, I'm going to do it now?
Yeah, it's funny when you were talking about breaking fake rules, and that's one of the first things I thought about in the context of when I ran for office is you always hear basically wait your turn, and that it's an older person's kind of game. And I ran at 26 years old. At that time, I got elected as the youngest city council member in modern San Antonio history. But I had some inspiration. My mom, who was a Mexican-American civil rights activist, had run when she was 23 for city council.
Wow.
And she lost. It was very difficult for women and people of color to win. But it was kind of in my blood, too. Yeah. So, it was sort of breaking a rule for the general population, but maybe within my family, that was the rule. You got to run early.
Wow. Yeah. That's an interesting thought. So when you made this decision, when you go into politics at that age, what are some things you ran into right away that you said, we have to push past this?
I think you see the influence of money in politics. Also navigating my own career. At that time, my brother Joaquin and I were twins. We basically walked through the world together. We went to Stanford together. We went to law school together, went to the same law firm. And then I got elected to city council about a year after I got back. And I was doing both. I negotiated with the firm to get less salary to be able to serve on the city council. But a few months after I got on the council, they had a client that had a land deal before the city council. That environmental activists were very concerned might pose a threat to the underground aquifer that is the primary source of water for San Antonio. And I wanted to vote against the deal, the client's deal, because it needed council approval.
Really?
So I was I was facing basically, you want to keep your job? Which job do you want to keep? The job
I think what they call this, if I may be wrong, but it sounds like conflict of interest. Just a little bit. Am I right? Just a little bit?
Yeah, well, one job was paying $100,000 back then, and the other job on the city council was paying $20 a week. The most that you could make was $1,040 a year under the charter. And but I wanted to vote against their deal. And so one day in January of 2002, I walked into the law firm and I quit my job. And then I went on and voted against their deal. And, my house went into foreclosure. I almost lost it. Literally got mail that said it was going to be on the list of properties at the courthouse, and, scrambled to get money with my mother and my brother and was able to save it. And my brother and I started our own little law firm. But yeah, navigating that part of it. And I think when I think about the rules, like one rule is basically you're put in this mode where you're supposed to be the good boy or good girl, in politics.
Right.
That you're on a rise and just do things the right way, in quotes. And I was proud at that point in my career that I was willing to take that risk to say no. Like, I'm going to go with my conscience, and I'm going to go with what I think the people that I'm representing want and need, and be a representative for them and risk that. It was also like, thinking back on it, I could only have done that at the age of 27. Like, yeah, I had bought a car, I'd bought a house, and I had student loan payments of $900 or $1,000, but I didn't have a family to support. I didn't have kids yet. I didn't have all of these things that make that decision even more difficult later on in life. So,
I mean, that's an extraordinary
in that sense,
story.
my youth actually helped.
And so, something we talked about this week while we've been at the conference, a topic that's come up. Well, I guess it may be my fault, but we talked a lot about control. And what you just described was a situation of control. I mean, being the good boy is a control. And so what does it take to buck that?
I've thought about that in the years since then. It did, it made it easier, my stage in life, but also I think you have to have a belief in yourself and a belief that things will turn out well, whether that's translated as faith in God or faith in something, but a belief that, okay, this is a big risk, but I think it's the right thing to do, and I think things are still going to work out.
So that was essentially momentum created by a series of fake rules that people were following. You broke that. That takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, I mean, when you're going through it, you feel like, well, I guess I didn't see the perspective of it as much as I do now. But now, having lived more of life and having more stakes, with a family and where I'm at, yeah, I mean, I think, wow. But I'm proud that I made that decision.
So let's go forward into what I think is probably one of your most interesting, courageous moves currently. You were a candidate for the White House. You were running an entire department, and now you've taken the most courageous step of your life into the world of philanthropy.
Yeah, that's right.
Welcome aboard.
Whole new world, different world. Yeah, with both a lot of charms and a lot of things that make you scratch your head.
Well, and we appreciate having you come into it and come in with a fresh look. And so tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, I went into public service growing up in a household with my mom, who, as I said, she had been an activist, and my brother and I were raised with this sense that you should use part of your talent and your effort, your time, to try and help other people. And for me, public service was the first way that I did that, on city council, as mayor, at HUD. And I just see this as a different way to do it. It definitely is distinct from public service, but ultimately I see the result of the work as being very similar. I mean, the Latino Community Foundation, investing in hundreds of Latina and Latino-led organizations or serving organizations over the years, and all the good work that those organizations are doing out there in community, it makes a difference. And so I see these roles as similar in that way.
And so when you are approaching donors, and it's something we talk about a lot around here, what's the value, what's the advantage to getting them to come into partnership with an intermediary, in this case, so an entity that is going to raise money and then re-grant it out to a community? What's the advantage to them to going with the Latino Community Foundation than, say, their local community foundation?
Yeah, I think that the track record of LCF has been that it's very close to the ground. One of the things that I've been most delighted by as I've traveled to the Central Valley of California, obviously they're in the Bay Area, we were in the Imperial Valley and the Inland Empire, these places that are not as invested in the state, is that time and again, the nonprofit leaders would say that their relationship with the Latino Community Foundation was different, that the LCF folks would show up at their events, that they would help them, in planning, that they would help them get media for their events, that they would go the extra mile of of sharing on Instagram story their events. And so the relationships that have been forged, maybe it's because, you know, a lot of those Latina and Latino-led organizations, they haven't been getting traditionally a lot of dollars from big philanthropy. And so they love the friendship, and they really cement a bond with our team at LCF. But that's the value. It's an organization whose team is in community, who has those relationships, knows absolutely who's doing good work, where the needs are, and that's the value of the intermediary relationship. And that part of it, Glenn, to me, when I came in as CEO, that was the part of it that gave me the most pause. Because coming from government, you're used to putting the dollars generally into those nonprofits directly, or another governmental unit or whatever.
Right.
And so I had this, what? How do I, basically, just to be blunt, how do I sell essentially the idea of being an intermediary?
Yeah.
And then I actually had the chance to go out there and see it, and see the relationships, and see the difference that it makes, and also understand on the other side, whether it's a family foundation or other institutions, a lot of times folks don't have the staff to go and be on the ground and understand or keep track of what's happening out there. Interestingly enough, this year, one of the things that we're doing to keep that culture of being like in community is that we're setting a goal for our team members to spend a certain number of hours every month in community, whether it's at an organization's event or helping them plan or in some other way being rooted with them. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
And that's kind of a shift too. Speaking for a family foundation, when Joy Stupsky was alive, she used to come into the office and say, "Boy, there are a lot of you in the office today. Why aren't you out? Why aren't you out there? Why are you in front of your computers?"
But either way, what can get missing, lost in the shuffle, is that direct connection with people,
right,
and with the work of those organizations that are impacting the community. And that's what we want to make sure that we never lose at LCF, is that connection. We also, we administer 17 giving circles. We're trying to cultivate the largest network of Latina and Latino philanthropists out there. And that also is, something that keeps us rooted among people all the time, because they're in-person giving circles, not virtual.
So the big statistic, there's a statistic underlying all of this, which is how much of philanthropic capital goes to the Latino community?
I think it's under 2%. Yeah.
I believe it's even closer to 1%.
Yeah.
So what's happening there? What's going on? And how do you guys break that?
Well, we're trying, I think in two ways, right? By doing excellent work and continuing to push, but we're not waiting. That's the idea behind these giving circles, is to cultivate a generation of Latinas and Latinos that themselves are philanthropists, and also to kind of buck the notion or the stigma sometimes that the community has as not a giving community, right? They absolutely are, whether it's at church or, in their family or in other ways. But through these giving circles, one of the strong messages that we want to send is it's happening. They're getting stronger. People are giving. And hopefully that also helps inspire more giving, because many of those organizations that they help seed are organizations then that are able to grow, to start to scale, and to get philanthropic dollars or investment from bigger philanthropy. So we feel like that's one way that we're doing it, also helping to launch these organizations.
I'm always struck at this time of year. I'm sure everybody in this room has the same experience. We start really focusing in on demographics in this time of a presidential cycle. If the Latino community comes out in this state, that could affect this. We start talking a lot about these communities, different identities showing up in different ways, and then we stop after the election's over. And so I wonder, what role an organization here, because I'm asking you this going back to the start of our conversation. You're coming in from a political environment, and where I'm sure you were in the room all the time, slicing and dicing data. How does an organization like yours keep the Latino community front and center all the time?
Yeah.
So that it's not just a tactic for cyclical movement building or get out the vote operations?
Yeah, it's a great question, because we do invest in organizations that are doing civic engagement and trying to educate and mobilize voters in a 501c3 way. So some of it is focused on, hey, the election is coming, people need to get out, get mobilized. But we also, because we're a community foundation, we're able to do advocacy, for instance. And so there's a consistent voice on that. We do polling not only around the elections, but actually off cycle too, and not just candidate polling, but we just did a poll, for instance, a California statewide poll that delved into issues related to housing policy and AI policy, what the community believes about that. And so in those different ways, we continue to make the opinions, the perspectives of the community known, including to elected officials.
And so let me switch gears on another topic that came up for me as I was listening to you there. I feel you are a political expert. So what's at stake in this election as you see it?
I think democracy as we know it. And to a lot of people, that may sound like hyperbole, but I think that the events of the last few years bear out that that's true. I think we have the choice of whether we're going to continue to be the kind of democracy that respects institutions and continues to build a multiracial democracy that reflects the reality, the demographics of the America that we live in today, or we're going to go backward. And so there's a lot at stake. And at the Latino Community Foundation, we don't support a candidate or a party, but we do support the community being well informed about issues, about candidates, and exercising their right to vote. And that's what I hope the most is. What I want to read in the days after the election is not that the Latino community didn't turn out. I want to read that people went to the polls, that they exercised their right to vote, and whatever happens, that they made their voice heard.
So I just want to ask you, this has been really, in a short period here, we've covered an amazing part of your life. And you really are someone that I really respect for just the story you've told and how you've lived your life. And you are uniquely doing something that we really feature here on this show. People that break fake rules, that those fake rules ultimately are why we have systems we have that may not be functioning effectively. And all through this conversation, you've been pointing to various moments where you've done it. So for people out there that watch this show, what's one thing you would share with people about how to be a fake rule breaker?
I'd say always keep a little bit of a contrarian in yourself. All of us have, that part of us that is, questions. And I don't know if it's something from childhood or whatever it is.
A mother who ran for office at 23?
Something, yeah. And some people probably have it more strongly, I'm sure, than others. But everybody, I think, I've found at some level has that contrarian voice. And harness that voice and don't let it overwhelm you, but know how to use it. And I think especially when you come upon, like I've come upon this year, a new experience in a new sector that I'm just learning about, and love getting feedback and guidance. There have been several people already who have been wonderful, including my predecessor, Jacqueline Martinez-Garcel, and also Carmen Rojas. I'm on the board of the Margaret Casey Foundation,
right.
And she's a Bay Area alum there from Workers Lab, and both of them are doing great work. But I think keeping that contrarian voice to ask questions, and why do we have to do it this way, or can we do it differently?
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Break Fake Rules. It's just wonderful to have you in the sector. I know we'll see you around, and I'm really looking forward to that. So I just want to celebrate you, and thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you, Glenn.
And thank you for joining us on another episode of Break Fake Rules. Get out there and make space and places for others. We'll see you next time. We have so much more to share with you, so follow the Stepsky Foundation's YouTube channel and join the conversation with me on LinkedIn.